All right, thank you, and thank you, Eric. I want to start by saying thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all today. I started my career as a climate scientist back about 20 years ago, and as a climate scientist, I knew then that working on this problem, the transition to a clean energy economy, was imperative not just from an environmental standpoint, but imperative from the standpoint of being able to create economic opportunity, being able to create security for our nation, and health for our citizens. So I hope that by coming here today, if I can share a couple of things that help in even a small way for us to put a dent in this problem, then I will have considered it a success. I'm going to talk about both businesses that I've started, both consumer businesses, one that you probably know about, Method, one you probably don't yet know about, Ripple Foods. Because they are both based on the same set of principles that I hope can apply to the problem of transitioning to a clean energy economy. So starting with the curve with which we're all familiar. So go back 20 years, and I worked at a place called the Carnegie Institution for Washington. And my job there was to take inputs like this curve, CO2 in the atmosphere, and input it into computer models, build computer models that would then predict what would happen to our ability to create food, ecosystem services, and the climate as a whole. And we knew then what the issues were, and we knew then the urgency of our need to act. Just as a reference point in time, that was when I started at Carnegie. I do find it sort of amazing that in the 20 years that I've been working, we've actually added almost 15% of the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere. It sort of blows my mind that we're doing it that fast. But it also blows my mind the type of technology and innovation that we're seeing that I think is going to solve this problem. Now, the reason that I made the transition from the climate science world to the soap world, two very different worlds, was really because of two reasons. The first was my frustration as a climate scientist. I was helping to write articles in scientific journals read by other scientists that were already concerned about the problem, were already calling for action. I worked on the Kyoto Protocol of 1997. Really amazing science, not a lot of tangible result that came out of that. I was frustrated by that. The second was that as a green consumer at the time, I was trying to lead a more sustainable lifestyle before that was the name of a type of lifestyle. But every green brand that I patronized was based around this idea of sacrifice. It was this sort of ugly, brown product that didn't work very well or didn't taste very good, and it was too expensive, and you sort of hid it away. And I just couldn't think of a movement or a brand that had ever been successful based off of a core proposition of sacrifice. And so I teamed up with a buddy and started Method in my garage. And I started it around three principles that I'll describe now. The first is it's not us that matters. It's everybody else. It turns out that about 4% of people really use sustainability as a primary decision maker in their lives, or use sustainability or greenness as a primary purchase driver of the products that they patronize. Or 4% that probably are deeply concerned and involved in the problem of moving to a clean energy economy. We need to be very wary of this echo chamber of the 4%. And actually what we need to do is we have to focus on the other 96. And that was the first principle that went into Method, was instead of trying to pull everybody towards a greener world that we lived in, we actually had to find a way to just bring the green to them. Subtle but profound difference. As a result, the message couldn't be green. We all know now that when we shout and we preach, it turns the people that we need to attract off. So what we need to do is we need to find ways of meeting those people where they are and having a conversation about the things that are important to them, not the things that are important to us, if we want them to help us join our movement. And then finally, we put the onus on ourselves as the makers of the stuff to make sure that the stuff was more sustainable, that the sustainability or the greenness of the product was integrated into the quality of that product itself. Business is the largest and most powerful institution on the planet. And therefore, I believe it has not only the opportunity, but actually the onus to solve this problem. And sure, we can use some help from enlightened government policy and other places, but at the end of the day, it is up to us, not to consumers, not to government, to lead. And it was with that we started the Method business. Now, we started with very big visions in a very small way, literally making the product in beer pitchers, true story, in a very dirty apartment shared by 5 bachelors in San Francisco. It's a very ironic place for a cleaning product business to be born. Believe me, I describe it as exactly as clean as you would think a bachelor pad of 5 men in their 20s to be. But the reason that Method looks the way it looks, the first thing that people usually notice about Method is the packaging. It's bright, it's vibrant, it's countertop worthy. The reason for that is that that's what brings people in. We have a lot of people that buy Method because it matches their bathroom. I've had people ask me the question, hey, doesn't it bother you that a lot of people that buy Method don't know that it's actually green? And I said, no, that's exactly the point, right? We're bringing the green to the mainstream and trying to pull mainstream towards green. We want people to buy it because it matches their bathroom, because it smells good, because they love the way it cleans. And then maybe eventually they turn the bottle over or they read a story in the press about how we're operating our business that makes them understand that there isn't a trade-off between sustainable business and good business, or green products and high-quality products. As we positioned our brand, rather than a green message, we brought a message that was a lot more whimsical. Cleaning's a chore. And to bring a little bit of whimsy to it with a message that is, yes, we're the first people to use naked people in a cleaning product advertisement, if I hear the chuckling already. And while you might not consider this image subtle, there was a subtle image here that cleaning didn't have to be something where you had to suit up, put the rubber gloves and the gas mask on. And it could be something that actually had a little bit of enjoyment to it, rather than a chore. Not only use the product, but in the realm of green cleaning products that came before us, a chore to even buy them. And I mean, the thought of buying a product because the earth is dying and I need to save it just is not a great experience. And so we wanted to elevate that experience and talk about what was primary to those consumers. But then we had to build in the utmost product sustainability into the brand. And so most of Method's packaging, nearly all of it, is perfectly clear. It's made from PET, which is water bottle plastic. And every single one of the millions of bottles that we make every year, we don't use a single gram of virgin plastic in any of those bottles. So all of the bottles are made from 100% post-consumer recycled PET. Now that's significant because that material, including all the recycling, transport, all of that, has about an 80% lower carbon footprint than virgin PET. Now, the important thing, of course, is you can't tell. It looks just like virgin plastic, but it's an inherent part of the quality of the brand that allows us to actually still have vibrancy, color, transparency, things that create an attractiveness for a product like this one, which is a hand wash that lives out on your countertop. From a product design standpoint, we did something similar. So laundry detergent. Laundry detergent, the biggest dissatisfier with laundry detergent is the big heavy jug and the messy sort of pouring and that whole operation. Turns out laundry detergent's mostly water. So we shrunk laundry detergent. We made it 1/8 the size and put it in a convenient package. And this is a package that saves millions of pounds of plastic, water, carbon emissions every year. The reason that people love this product is it's one-handed. You can hold your baby in one hand and squirt the laundry into the machine with the other. So part of the quality. And then from a supply chain standpoint, using scientific analysis to understand where our impacts are in making investments in those places. About 80% of the carbon footprint of Method's brand in the United States is actually distributing its products to its own customers. And as a result, we made an investment very early on, which was initially one truck running off of secondary waste vegetable oil biodiesel. Now is 15 trucks and delivers, depending on the time of year, because you need to do it less in the cold months versus the warm months, about 40% of Method's annual volume, which lowers the carbon footprint of the entire business by about 30%. Again, not something that's terribly transparent to consumers, not a message that you see on our bottles, but something that as you learn more about the brand or dig more into the brand is there. And there's a lot more there as well. Method was a founding B Corp. We're a certified benefit corp in the state of Delaware, and actually you can go to bcorporation.net and you can see real-time, fully transparent, all of our scores from an environmental standpoint, workers, employees, et cetera, which is really about the corporate goal of making sure that not only are we pursuing financial goals, but we're pursuing environmental and social goals concurrently, not trading each other off, but trying to maximize all three. Now I want to talk just very briefly about my new business. This is the one you probably haven't heard about other than the introduction, which is Ripple Foods. And Ripple is based off of the same three principles, but in a very different category. So take your mind out of the world of soap and let's go into the world of milk. Okay, so I work on really inspiring things, soap, milk. And Ripple, as you can see, we're talking about dairy-free as it should be. So let's talk about what that means. Right now, well, the last 30 years, consumption of milk in the United States has gone down by 35% per capita. Most of that has been taken up by dairy alternatives. That is partially because people are lactose intolerant or have milk allergies, but actually the primary reasons are broader health reasons. People perceive it to be healthier, they're suspicious of dairy, they want to go to more plant-based diets. The issue is that 90% of the dairy alternative category are almond milks, coconut milks, cashew milks, rice milks, all of which have almost no protein whatsoever. So they're lacking the number one nutritional benefit of dairy. And they're all thin and watery, and they are not a good experience relative to the milk that we're all used to drinking and probably grew up with. And so with Ripple, we're setting out to kind of change that. We are launching a line of milks. It's actually going to be in Whole Foods stores in 2 weeks. Sorry for the plug, but I am an entrepreneur. So look for it. It'll look like that, 2 weeks in Whole Foods. Nationwide. And what we're doing, we're making these milks out of split peas. And we have a technology to make split peas not taste like split peas, so that it actually tastes really creamy, really delicious. And we're basing the brand around what dairy-free should be, which is high protein, low in sugar, and really delicious. Something very simple. The interesting thing is that by making milk out of a split pea instead of out of an almond or getting it from a cow, there are massive sustainability benefits. First of all, from a water standpoint, about 98 or 99% respectively versus almond milk and cow's milk, lower water footprint. And then at least an order of magnitude, 10 to 15 times better than both from a carbon impact. And that's just simply because peas grow in the upper Midwest. They don't require irrigation, fertilizer. 99% of almonds are grown in the Central Valley. We all know what's going on there. You've got to import a lot of water and a lot of fertilizer to do that. And so again, the sustainability benefits are built in. It'll be part of the story that's the broader story of the brand. But the brand itself is really just about what matters to people, the other 96. It's high in protein, it's low in sugar, and it's really delicious. If that can get us to get much more mass adoption, then the carbon and water impacts of Ripple Foods business will be immense and will create a ripple effect. Now you know where I came up with the brand name. So I want to close today by talking a little bit. I'm going to go back to Method, and I want to talk about something that we did over the last couple of years here in the city of Chicago, because I think that there are some interesting lessons here. In 2012, our business got to the scale where we had the opportunity to build our own manufacturing plant in the United States for all of our North American volume. So up until 2012, we had contract manufactured all method products. So as we were looking for a location to build this factory, there were a couple of factors that I really wanted to integrate into the design of this thing. The design brief to begin with was a lofty one. It was simply to build the most sustainable manufacturing facility that the world had ever seen. Small vision. And in order to do that, what we had to do at every point and every decision point of building this factory, we had to ask ourselves, how do we accrue benefit to the community that we're inhabiting with this factory and the world at large around that community? We landed on the city of Chicago for a lot of reasons, not the least of which was some great support from the city of Chicago. And we landed in the historic Pullman neighborhood, which is on the far south side, about 111th Street. And the Pullman area, as many of you probably know in this room, has a rich industrial history, but has suffered from decades of disinvestment. And when we were looking for our home, what I wanted to do first and foremost is I wanted this to be an urban factory. You know, you can get a free piece of land 20 miles, 30 miles west of here, and it's much easier and it's much cheaper to build a factory out there, and most people do. But the fact is that half of us live in cities today, and that number will be more like 75 or 80% in the next 30 years. So if we want to create a more sustainable future, we've got to create jobs and we've got to create things where we live. And so we really wanted this to be, first and foremost, an urban factory. As you would expect, we used a lot of sustainable materials in its construction, the steel, the concrete, the insulation, and so forth. We had a goal of making the factory carbon neutral, water neutral, and landfill free. On the water side, this is an area of particular interest of mine. I did grow up in the Great Lakes watershed in the state of Michigan. And I wanted to make sure that every single drop of water we used in this factory actually got put back in the watershed. And so through a partnership with the Nature Conservancy and Michigan State University, we're doing exactly that. By creating incentive for farmers within the watershed to implement practices that keep the water put the water back in the aquifers rather than having it run off into the lakes and ultimately out of the watershed. The factory has the largest rooftop greenhouse in the world on its roof. We wanted to celebrate the idea of the green roof, but we wanted to take it to another level, and we wanted to, again, how do we create the most benefit for the community that we're going to inhabit? The far south side, it's a food desert. There's not a lot of places to buy fresh vegetables around there. So we partnered with a company called Gotham Greens, which does this sort of rooftop farming. And they built a 2-acre greenhouse on the roof of our factory. We worked together to design the factory so that it could hold it. Creates dozens more jobs. And it creates about 1 million pounds of fresh leafy greens a year on the roof of a soap factory. From a community standpoint, I mean, this is the one that I think hits really home here in Chicago, is there are a lot of people that desperately need jobs in this town, and there are a lot of really good people. And what we decided to do is to hire people that had no previous skills in manufacturing, to train them, and then give them full benefits, give them health care, and give them incentive compensation for good performance. A lot of times people will say, well, hey, Adam, doesn't all that stuff cost a little extra? The answer is yes, but we actually make that all back in terms of the productivity, the lack of absenteeism, the lack of turnover that we have in the factory. So I actually think that even on a purely economic analysis, that's something that makes sense. And then, of course, we educate. So we bring in a lot of school groups. We do tours all the time. Actually, every one of you is welcome to schedule a tour anytime you want to come down and see the factory. see what we've done. And that's really our way of saying, hey, we've gone this far, and that's great, but others need to go further than we've been able to go. And then, of course, from an energy standpoint, we wanted this to not only be as efficient as possible, but generate its own energy. And that's really what I wanted to close on today. Because we had an interesting experience. So this is what you see when you drive up to the factory. You see about 80 kilowatts of solar trees, and this is just 2 of them, and you see a 700 kilowatt wind turbine, utility scale. We started construction of the building itself on Valentine's Day 2014. By October of 2014, the building was done. The wind turbine was in, and the entire 150,000 square foot building was done, and we were ready to move in. The wind turbine was installed on September 18th, 2014. It was ready to operate a couple of days later. We got approval to operate it in July of last year. What that means is to build on a 22-acre site, to build a 150,000 square foot building, greenhouses on the roof, LEED Platinum certified. It took 4 weeks to permit, thanks to the City of Chicago's green permitting program. It took 8 months start to finish to construct the entire thing. It took 10 months after we built the windmill to be able to turn it on. That was rough. The other thing that was rough is the incremental expenses. Now, these dollar amounts to a lot of people in this room probably doesn't look like a lot of money. We spent about $1.5 million to build the windmill. Keep in mind, this is building a windmill on land that we owned, using entirely all of our money. And in that 10 months period of time, after it was installed and we spent all that money, we spent all of this money just to get the thing to operate. What that meant is that our payback, which originally was 7 years on the windmill, is now 10 years. And this is what I think is a really important point. Our process of building this factory in Chicago, to be honest, is one of the greatest things that I think I'll ever accomplish in my career. The process of actually implementing renewable power in a city that was 100% behind us, on land that we owned entirely with our own money, was a very different story from the story that we see in the public about our companies, our utilities' willingness and eagerness to implement renewable energy. I will tell you that the people that we worked with were not excited that we were building a windmill. I had a lot of conversations about intermittency. I had a lot of conversations about surge. I had a lot of conversations about things, some of which were very practical issues. And you know, most of the people we work with were really good people. But at the end of the day, we've got to change the way that we do these things if we want more businesses and to work on installing renewable energy, and if we want to create the type of change that we're all here to do. What I fear is that with paybacks going from 7 years to 10 years, that could be the difference between a business like mine investing or not investing in renewable energy. And keep in mind that this was entirely on our dime, entirely on our land, and in a city that supported us. So what I hope is that, as we have just learned, the month of February was the hottest ever, and sort of alarmingly accelerating rate of change. Now more than ever, we need this type of change. And if there's one message I want to leave you guys with today, it's that it's great that we're all here and that we're thinking about this problem. We've got to do better than we are today at enabling businesses, institutions, governments to invest in and implement renewable energy if we want to solve this problem. Thank you.